thank you, Ben, for joining us. So today our guest speaker is Ben Welsh, who is the Chief Creative Officer for DDB Australia, Asia. Is it Asia?
Just Australia. Yeah. Steady on.
Well, Asia's next.
No, I've been there, done that.
Been there, done that. Okay.
That's a tough gig.
So Ben's going to share with us today, as you can see on screen, how to write a great car ad with a focus on Volkswagen. DDB has Volkswagen, the Volkswagen account, and I think DDB has the Volkswagen account worldwide. And it's a great agency. It's a great creative agency. I think they were Campaign Brief Agency of the Year, Creative Agency of the Year last year in 2019.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were runner-up this year. We should have. Yeah. We were pipped at the post by BMF, but I think we deserved it more this year than we did last year, bizarrely. But okay, them's the breaks.
Yeah. Well, it's still not bad to be a close second.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Ben. I'll hand it over to you now. And
okay. Thanks, John. And good evening, everyone. Again, apologies for being a little late. And like John briefed me, I think John said you've got a car brief. So I thought, great, I can talk about Volkswagen because I love talking about Volkswagen. One of the reasons is it's formed such a key part of DDB's history. If you don't know this, this can be part of your homework too, but DDB invented modern advertising, particularly Bill Bernbach, and they started in 1949. And the agency was all about, it was the antithesis of what was being talked about at the time back then. And in fact, still now, a lot of people thought that the most important thing to do was to find something unique to say about a product or brand and say it over and over again. And then that would work. And that led to some very boring advertising. And I think also advertising was promising you this better life where you were a failure if you didn't actually sort of become part of it. And again, I think we might be slightly guilty of that still. But Bill Bernbach, and you should look him up again if you don't know him. No man has more relevant quotes in advertising, and a lot of his statements were written. Certainly one in 1947 I remember reading, not in 1947, I hasten to add. But it was just about advertising and what the role of advertising is. And he has, one of his quotes that I like most is that we are so focused on what's new, what's on trend, what's changing, I'm paraphrasing this, that we forget the one thing that hasn't changed in a million years, human beings. And so much of it, what he believed in, was about humanity and the things that drive us as humans. And I think the first ad, the ad, DDB won the Volkswagen account, and I think about late 50s, and they kind of invented modern advertising off the back of Volkswagen. I think some of the stuff they were doing before was interesting, but Volkswagen really nailed it. And the ad that probably summed up everything is this one, Think Small, which came out in 1962. And just to give you an idea of what 1962 looked like, this is what everyone else was doing. They were big, colourful, on trend. Even the language, there's no new car anything like it. A foot shorter than the big ones, the new Ford Fairlane 500 fits in your garage as prettily as it sits on a beach. Its bigness is inside. So this is all that thing about the unique selling thing. So it's big on the inside, not the outside. And I have to say, this is one of the better bad ones of that time. But that's what everyone was talking about. It was big, it was flash, it was new, it had fins, it was cool. And Volkswagen came out with this spot, Think Small. And it wasn't their first ad, but I think it was their first great ad. Our little car isn't so much a novelty anymore. A couple of dozen college kids don't try to squeeze inside it. The guy at the gas station doesn't ask where the gas goes. Nobody even stares at our shape. In fact, some people who drive our little flivver don't even think 32 miles to the gallon is going any great guns, or using 5 pints of oil instead of 5 quarts, or never needing antifreeze, or racking up 40,000 miles on a set of tires. That's because once you get used to some of our economies, you don't even think about them anymore, except when you squeeze into a small parking spot, or renew your small insurance, or pay a small repair bill, or trade in your old VW for a new one. Think it over. So this layout, to me, you could run now. It actually has become the standard layout for a lot of print, which is rapidly disappearing. So,
Yeah.
which is great. I think it'll come back because I think it can do things other things can't. But to be well, take the piss out of yourself, to put yourself down, just was unheard of. But it established something that Volkswagen have been kept true to mostly ever since. There's two things. One is this tonality. It's beautifully written. It's quite smart. It's speaking to one person. It's very friendly, but it's not taking itself too seriously either. So there's a tonal thing. And then I think it's also very simple. It's encouraging you, when in a world that's thinking big, it's encouraging you to think small. And you'll see some ads coming up in a minute where small has appeared again for Volkswagen.
And I think very relevant for today too. Thinking small.
Yes, very. In fact, we've been working on a campaign for Europe for the new Polo, and we came up with a line that was all about small again.
Yeah.
But so that still is probably considered one of the best car ads ever made. And I think Volkswagen still use that font. And in fact, we've gone back to the logo that's in that ad. We just recently changed the logo on the brand, and that's it. Yeah. So it's gone nearly 60 years later, it's gone back to where it was. So as I say, there's that shitty one. So you can look at that, which is kind of cool nowadays because of the retro styling, but it wasn't great then. So that is, if I was just going to show you one thing, it would be that ad. And I would say, encourage everyone to be as honest and simple as that. But a bit more about car advertising. I think it's a good idea to understand the market a bit more. And here is a car, a Bentley, which is funnily enough part of the Volkswagen family these days, would you believe? And I would love one of these. I've got a Volkswagen, but I would love a Bentley. And the interesting thing about car advertising is a car is the most expensive brand you will ever buy into. Unless you spend a fortune on watches, and some people do, or even handbags, I don't think there's anything like houses aren't, and Learjets, obviously airplanes, but houses aren't branded. So if you think about the power of advertising, it's probably at its greatest when it comes to car advertising, because we're asking you to part with at least $20,000 and possibly up to $2 million. I don't know what the most expensive cars cost these days, but we are asking you to part with a lot of dough. So it's a phenomenally emotional purchase, because if it wasn't a phenomenally emotional purchase, we would all be driving Toyota Camrys, because it is it is the most sensible car you could buy. Economy, everything, space, but we don't. We crave for many more things. And I think that gives a clue to how the market operates. And a lot of car advertisers go wrong because cars aren't aimed at people in the market right now. And I think on average, they reckon people buy a new car every 5 years, and they're looking for a couple of months. So at any given time, that is what, 630. So that's, I don't know, that's quite a lot of people. several 100,000 people buying a car at any given time. And I think in Australia, people buy about 1 million cars a year. But it doesn't mean we're talking to those people, because those people have almost made up their mind about us, and they've got a shopping list and they're doing research, they're going online, they're talking to friends, they're test driving. So our job is before that. So we need to talk to the entire market. And I do think it's interesting when you think about cars you drew as children. Cars, I can remember being obsessed with wanting a Porsche when I was pretty young. I don't anymore, which is probably a good thing. But we do desire things, and I think brands build that desire. So car advertising plays a key role in priming people, getting them to fall in love with a brand. So how do you do that? Well, here's some advice from Volkswagen. Pick one thing. Don't try and talk about everything, because cars have always got lots of things to talk about. But if you just pick one thing, you can't go wrong. Now, the next ad is an ad that came out probably about 1968 for the Carmen Ghia. Can you see this?
Yes, we can,
Yeah,
Ben.
good. Great.
Beautiful car too. Just wasn't very powerful.
So that would have had a logo on the end of it. Didn't make it because of my bad research. But it is really beautifully, simply written too. So it's a great. Just says it's almost one shot. It's two shots. It's taking the piss out of itself. You think about sports cars then. It's actually playing to its weakness. It's not that powerful. And I've always wanted one of those. I think they're awesome, very pretty cars. So they decided to talk about one thing that allowed them to be very true to their own brand. And that was being a sports car that wasn't very powerful. Here's another famous one, which came out from the UK probably 15 years ago, do you reckon, John?
Yeah, that's right, Ben.
Yeah.
It would have been, yeah.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
And it won lots of awards, and I think it sold a lot of cars because it's a cheeky little celebration of the Volkswagen Polo. And this small but tough moniker they'd been using to describe the Polo for quite some time. And they did a beautiful ad about jockeys falling off horses and curling themselves up. And it said, isn't it interesting that when we feel in danger, we make ourselves small?
Yep.
The new Polo, small but tough. So that car equals small but tough. It's been used across the world. It's resulted in some brilliant ads. It could almost have been the brief, and they found a way of adding charm to it. It was interesting. I found two of these. One must have been the out-of-home execution with a different angle. I think I prefer the other one, but they both work, and they both get the message across that this car is, I suppose it's basically saying it's the toughest one in its class, and people tend to think of small cars as not being tough. And I think they had enough truth to the car, the way it clunked, the way it was built to say this, but probably wasn't that much tougher than a Peugeot or something. But it led to some, a car you'd fall in love with. Next, and this, that pick one thing talks to this too. I reckon too many car ads try to create a brochure in film rather than telling a story, and a story that's about one thing. So next up is another old Volkswagen ad that I love. So I don't know whether you've seen that before, but
No.
that is a very modern ad in that it tells a story, quite a long story, and you have to wait to the end of the ad to find out what it's all about, and that's where the product lives. And I mean, it's pretty epic the way it's filmed, who's in it, everything about it. And I think, again, they've just picked one thing, but they've told a story about that, and it's about the economy of the beetle. And it's charming. 1969, that one.
Beautifully shot too.
Yeah, it was.
So
this is more recent.
Try it again, Ben. Just play.
Okay.
Yeah, just play that one again if you don't mind, if you can.
Yeah, cool. So you heard this one.
Yeah, we can hear it now.
We can hear it now.
Oh, you couldn't hear it before?
Well, yeah, I didn't. I thought it was silent.
Oh, no. Okay, well, let me play them again.
All right.
Here we go.
I wasn't sure because I was so old.
Important. So you can hear that?
Yes. That's better.
To my wife who spent money like there was no tomorrow, I leave $100 and a calendar. To my sons, Rodney and Victor, who spent every dime I ever gave them on fancy cars and fast women, I leave $50 in dimes. To my business partner, Jules, whose only motto was spend, I leave nothing. And to my other friends and relatives who also never learned the value of a dollar, I leave $1. Finally, to my Harold, who oft-times said, a penny saved is a penny earned, and who also oft-times said, gee, Uncle Max, it sure pays to own a Volkswagen. I leave my entire fortune of $100 billion.
Yeah. Hopefully everything I said makes sense now. Because
yes, it does. No, it does. It does.
Classic ad, and it is beautifully shot. It feels very Hollywood.
Oh, and the characters were
amazing. They're lovely, and it did feel like everyone who bought a Volks, but it probably reaffirmed the purchase for all the drivers of Volkswagens too. Would have made them feel smart.
Yeah.
So the next one is a Super Bowl ad from a few years ago. It's one of my favorites. That again is a piece of brilliant story. The car doesn't come in till the end. It's about humanity. That funeral ad was really about the way humans interact with each other. This next ad is really about being a dad and the joy of being a dad. And yes, there's a feature in the car, but the joy comes from the feeling of being a dad. Yeah, so obviously sounds pretty important to that one too. But
yes,
that feature is probably for the car to start and warm up before you get into it. But to tell it, to make it about the joy of being a parent, because they were talking to families, I suppose. I think,
to get that insight. Yeah.
Classic Volkswagen. Now, the next spot is something we did here, and I think I'm aware that I've shown you a lot of old stuff. This was a couple of years ago, and it was basically social media led. And this is pretty much what went to market.
Let's go. Go on, hero. Strap in. Feel the G's. Luck. He's off. Looking good. Look at the strap. Pull your feet in. Bouncing. Oh, whoa.
So, excuse me. I didn't want to give that one away. So that ran in social media, and it looked like a clip from, can't remember what they're called now, but it looked like a real thing. And then people who'd seen that then saw the next film that told you who the car was from. But before that happened, an awful lot of chat happened, which is now in this case study, hopefully.
Other heroes. Like, TV's #1 daily viral video show.
So let's go on to this next cowboy in Australia.
Without further ado, here is my idiot of the year. Don't try this at home and watch this to the very end.
Oh no.
This has got disaster.
Yeah, seems like a great idea. Thanks for the shove, everybody.
Nothing's still alive. Into the dam, watch closely, and we are good.
Oh, he's bouncing somewhere, I'm not falling out, but it's... Oh, he's standing after all that spinning. I have no idea. This could have been so horrible at the end, though. It turns out so awesome.
Okay, so hopefully that made sense. It did stop. We did 3 little films that were all unfails, but I think that was the best one, and it did get massively talked about. And again, I think it's sort of very insightful. We knew what people were looking at, what entertained them. There were ads running that were aimed about features that were, again, telling stories about life. And there was just a niche audience that we needed to attract, because polos, funnily enough, are either bought by people under 30 or over 50 as a second car. And I don't know whether anyone saw that when it came out, but
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
yeah, cool. Yeah. The other thing you'll notice is you spend almost as much time on the case study video as you do coming up with the idea these days, which is a sad but unnecessary. Next, I think this is very true of nearly all Volkswagen work. If you're onto a good thing, stick with it. They've had some famous campaigns. That Polo one about small but tough was an example of something that ran for a very long time. I've just got 2 examples here of more recent work. Again, one is from the 1980s, so it's not that recent. The other one is from about probably 12 years ago. But the homework is actually to find more of these and put together your favorite ones of the campaign and work out when it started, when it finished. So this was one, and it was a retail campaign. And this, normally retail, you go, oh, there's no fucking chance of doing anything good. We'll just have to show a picture of the car and a price. But the idea they came up for this, and this I think was written by a guy called Andrew Fraser, who's actually based in Sydney now, this notion of surprisingly ordinary prices, because people thought Volkswagens were expensive, and they still have that reputation here. And then when they bought the Polo out at £8,240, people were, oh, is that all? So they came up with this campaign of which this is just one out-of-home execution, where the photographer is focused on the wrong thing, surprisingly ordinary prices. And again, it's not, it does take a bit of a get, but it's like owning a Volkswagen is being a little bit smarter, or it makes you feel good about owning a Volkswagen, really. And you'll see a Volkswagen Golf parked on the right of picture, which they were also pretty good at. So there are many other executions in this campaign, including some ads, TV. So see what you can find on that. The next is,
Everyone is going through change. No one knows what's going on. And everybody changes place. But the world still carries on. Love must always change to sorrow. And everyone must play the game. It's here today and gone tomorrow. But the world goes on the same.
so that campaign, I think that's from 1989. She looks a lot like Princess Di. It was shot by David Bailey, who's one of the greatest photographers of that era and did a bit of film too. So you will find many more ads in that campaign, and they're all worth chasing at, hunting down. If only everything in life was as reliable as a Volkswagen. I don't know how reliable Volkswagens were back then. I think I had one and it wasn't particularly reliable, but they kept saying that for so long, and they told stories about life, and they didn't compare the Volkswagen to another car, they compared it to life. They captured this slightly smart, slightly superior ground that went, it's from the UK, so it worked very well there. And I wonder, actually, looking at that ad, showing women in mink coats throwing away massive rocks, probably why they need to run surprisingly low prices a few years later, because they would have built up this whole thing, a premium thing. To this day, Volkswagen's overall mantra is premium for the people. It's the thing that defines their cars and how they build them and everything about them. So I'm going to stop sharing because that's it. So you gather what the homework is from that. I'll get my cursor to move.
Yes.
There we go. So I could go on, well, I could have gone on for much longer. Hopefully that was helpful. And sorry you didn't hear everything.
No, we did. We did in the end.
Yeah,
no, that was all good. All good, Ben. Yeah.
So if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer. I've probably got 10 minutes if anyone's got any questions.
So you were just saying then, so the thing about Volkswagen today is, what was the words you used? Premium for the people.
Premium for the people. And it's, I found it quite a captivating statement. It's not always easy to hit, but that people should, like, if you buy a Polo, you will spend a little bit more than something else, but you will get things in it that you wouldn't expect. Yeah. So they
and it's always, sorry, yeah, because it was originally known as the people's car, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Volkswagen means people's car. So premium for the people. And for the people does still feel very relevant. And they've now got a Touareg that costs about $90,000, and suddenly you start going, how do you advertise that? Because it doesn't feel like it's true to who they are. And a few years ago, they developed something called a Phaeton that was to take on Mercedes. And it was an amazing car. And there's a Top Gear episode about it. It had the glove box was a champagne fridge, and it had all sorts of things. But it failed because it was a Volkswagen, and no one's going to spend people's car. So you need to be true to who you are, I think, as a brand.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's right. I mean, you can see that with Mercedes Benz, but you know, something like that for Mercedes Benz, but or Audi, or but Volkswagen is, you know, and it's funny, like Volkswagen, where are they in the market? They must be very close to number 1 or 2.
Globally, they are number 2, just behind Toyota.
Yeah.
But then they do have Audi, Skoda, Seat, and Bentley, Lamborghini are all part of the family.
Oh, the family, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the total group. In Australia, I think they are...
Well, Toyota's number 1.
Yeah, Golf might be the number 10 top-selling car, or Volkswagen might be number 10 top-selling brand. I can't remember.
Yeah.
They for a long time in this market, they didn't have the SUVs that everyone wanted, so now they've just launched 2 new cars, T-Roc and T-Cross, so they are...
Yeah.
But, you know, not a good time to be selling cars.
No, it's not a good time to be selling cars, and I must say, where I live, everyone has got... in the street, everyone's got an Amarok.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they're awesome, Amaroks.
Yeah, everyone's got Amaroks.
Hey, John, I'm just wondering if we should see if the students have some questions.
Yes, absolutely. So, yes, please jump in. Usually they...
I have a question. As Chief Creative Officer, what's your role with getting the big ideas underway, and how are you involved with developing them?
Well, I've got some brilliant people here. So sometimes it's very little. I've always wanted to be... I think it's more at the beginning and the end. I think I want to make sure the strategy is right. And I think often you get given briefs to do something and you're wondering, but why? Why do they want it? What is the compelling reason for doing this? What are we trying to achieve? So I do annoy people by being almost stepping on all the planners' toes by questioning everything. And then I try to then sort of leave it alone till the end of the process, when just trying to sort of, I don't know, it should be a simple question. What you will find is, as you become a creative director, as a creative, you come up with ideas. And once you get to make, when someone likes that idea and you make it, it's the best feeling in the world. And then you get this joy of coming up with ideas. And then you become a creative director. Your role is to nurture other people's ideas. And it's a different sort of joy. And you can feel, it's vicarious. I can look at a young team here who have just cracked a really big idea for one of our clients. And I'm so happy for them. But every now and again, I'll try and sort of start writing things myself. And I mustn't do that. And then when you get to being the CCO, you've got creative directors and ECDs, and you've got to let them do their job. So by focusing on the front and the end, I try to make sure that everyone else can do their thing. And micromanagement, I think, is a terrible thing. You need to give them the ball, as they say, and run with it. You can't always be looking over their shoulder. So, yeah, that's what I try to do.
Thank you.
Renee. Was it Renee?
Yes, Renee. Yeah. Thanks, Renee. Anyone else? Who else would like to ask? Now's a really good time.
Hi, Ben.
Yes.
My question is, throughout your history in advertising, what's the ad that you're most proud of, that you've been a part of, or you've, obviously come up with the idea for, and why? Tough question, I know, but might as well ask.
I'll pick 3 things to try and illustrate the entire industry. So last year we did, was it last year? Yeah. So the end of the last series of Game of Thrones was launching last April. And we created something called Grave of Thrones, which was a graveyard which remembered some of the key characters from the show. And it really was amazing. It was one of the best bits of work this agency's done. And the team, Tim and Tommy and Jacko, David Jackson, the creative director, were, was their idea. Foxtel were one of the worst clients I've ever worked on. We don't work on that anymore. And apologies to anyone who may have anything to do with them, but they were hard because their business is declining.
Yeah.
And they're panicking, and so they just wanted to retail everything. And we managed to get that idea in and got them to invest in it. And I don't think that would have ever have happened if we hadn't have played the game and done all the shit that they wanted. So I think part of the job is also knowing which horses to back and knowing when you're onto, pushing something when you're onto a winner. So that, I'm pretty proud of that. Combank, I love the Westpac work we've done too. It's beautiful storytelling, and I feel like, I can be proud of that. I would go back to Combank though, which was work I did at a previous agency when we launched Can, and I was part of the team that did that. It was a group of people that made that happen, and I don't think any of the actual ads we did were ever that brilliant, but I think the idea was, and I think the idea actually made that bank an awful lot of money. So you can look at that and go, job well done. Then I'll go back 2000, so that's probably 2012. Then at some point on Optus, I did something called Whale Song, which is all about an orchestra going out to sea and playing whale song and attracting whales. And I studied marine biology, so that kind of was an important one to me. But I also, every time I see it, I still love the humanity in it, the ambition in it. It didn't win many awards. It was kind of a bit old-fashioned the way it was shot, but I think it won a lot of hearts. And every time we ran it, the website crashed because so many people went to it. So I wrote that. So as a writer, I'm pretty proud of that. Then I'd go back to 1999 for the 4, because now I'm talking about myself more than
that's last century now, Ben.
Yeah, I know. 100% Pure New Zealand is still running today, and that was something I worked on.
Yeah, that's a great line.
Then, and I think that defined modern tourism advertising. It was influenced by, funnily enough, an old DDB campaign for Jamaica, which we took as the benchmark, and we said we've got to do something better than that. So those pieces.
And that line, that 100% Pure New Zealand, I mean, that they still use it today.
Yeah.
And they should forever use it.
Yeah.
Because it's perfect for New Zealand.
Yeah.
Well, it is the best country in the world, isn't it?
It is. David, yes.
What are we doing here?
Yes, that's exactly right. Why are you here?
Yeah, well, I can't get back. They won't let me in. Hey, can I get a clear takeaway, Ben? That storytelling is really, really critical from how you see advertising, and the consumer. If a consumer really emotionally connects to that story, then it's a win. And I think you've clearly demonstrated that today through all those examples. It's really strong storytelling that has a really strong emotional link. And as a result, there's a magnificent uplift.
Yeah. No, I think it's spot on. And again, I think Westpac's an example of that we, I guess the challenge with storytelling is you tend to rely on film, which tends to rely on TV. And so much of the industry, I think half the media now goes into digital, isn't it? Some sort of...
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a heavy commitment.
It's a heavy commitment, yeah.
So how you can tell emotional stories. And I think emotional stories don't have to be heartfelt. They can be funny. They can be all sorts of things. But a story, I mean, it's human nature. I really do think the things, just remember that we're talking to humans, and that's kind of lesson number one. And too often people do ads because they think that's the way to do ads. Certainly how I think when I started, you look at ads and you go, oh, that's how you do it, and you do one and you go, it's a bit shit. But if you do it for your mum or a friend or something like that, it's much truer. And I do believe, people say, we're not I don't think we're as bad as lawyers and car salesmen. We're not much better. And I think our principle, our role is to inform and amuse and entertain, because we're interrupting people all the time. So we need to earn the right to do that. And stories are a great way of doing that. Really.
Meg, I think you've got a question, Meg.
Yeah, I was just going to ask what recommendations you would have for large briefs, such as that you've worked on, where the budget might not support that. So, like, if it can't sustain TV advertising, but you want to achieve that emotive response, what recommendations would you have for that?
Well, I would be looking at podcasts right now. I think people are snapping up podcasts like never before, and I don't know that I've seen anything done that uses a podcast really well. And it is a storytelling format, so you could look at different media choices. It is always the budget is always a challenge, and I think there isn't much point. It's almost like you can't advertise unless you've got a minimum. You need to have some money. And it is something we tell our clients all the time. And we've got one client at the moment, fairly recent, who we're getting them to spend far more than they've ever spent before, because they view it as an investment. And I think it is much better to view it as an investment than a cost. If you have a client that thinks it's a cost, they'll never be a good client. You have one who thinks it's an investment, you've got some hope. So you start small, think small, I suppose, that opening ad. Think what you can do that's interesting. There was a brilliant post done, again, for New Zealand Tourism by 11, which is the PR agency of TBWA. And it was about gay marriage. And when it was legal in New Zealand and wasn't here, I think it was just a post that said, come and get married in New Zealand, but it was much cleverer than that. And that went mental because it was tapping into something. So maybe that the answer is tap into some existing emotion that you can access on the cheap.
Yeah. And something that's probably quite sort of topical or relevant to what's happening. I think the whole thing about advertising too, Ben, is that we tend to reflect what's happening in society or in communities. Yeah. And I think there's a fair bit of storytelling that can come out of that,
Actually, I just thought of another good example that might help with that question. A few years ago, someone hijacked the Paris Marathon. This girl walked the entire marathon with a big water container on her head. And to make the point that in her town in Sudan, she had to walk 26 miles a day, like 13 there and 13 back, to get water. And it was all about the charity to get clean water to different places in the world. And that would have cost nothing to do, but the impact it had, well, the entry fee for the marathon, the impact was enormous. So that was hijacking something. I think, hijack an event or a thing that's going on in culture.
Well, you sort of did that with the viral video, didn't you? In a sense, I mean, that was all. You got so much earned media out of that. It was phenomenal.
Completely. Yeah, which is It's always great when you've got it. You never know whether you'll get it. I mean, there was some paid for media, which again, it's an investment. It helps kick it off.
Yeah. Okay.
I had a question. Ben, you mentioned storytelling, and I know that it seems like these days people sort of have a lot shorter attention spans than they used to. So I was wondering how you could be more economical with your storytelling and advertising.
Yeah, and Monica, I think you've emailed me, and I owe you a.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's fine.
I don't know that I agree with that, because movies haven't got any shorter. Netflix series episodes are up to an hour long, and you might have 8 of them. I think people, if they're interested enough, will watch something that's longer. Unfortunately, social media networks, the people like Facebook are telling us that, oh, you've only got them for 2 seconds, so you've got to get your message across in 2 seconds. Think about all that Volkswagen stuff I showed. How it worked was it engaged, and I think we need to understand how people engage in media, and maybe, you know, when you're swiping, just flicking through stuff, it is a different mindset. But if you see, you still need to trap someone and lure them in. I did probably 5 years ago now something for What If, and we created a 2.5-minute film. There was a song based on this notion of a place called Watifia, and we were welcoming people to Watifia, and it was very silly. And I think 90% of the views watched to the end, and quite a lot of people went back. So I dispute that. I think it's easy to say people have got no time, so you have to get your message across quickly. I think because people don't have much time, you need to make sure it's worth their time to see your message.
I see. Thank you.
I don't know.
That's your challenge, Monica.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
And I will get back to you, I promise.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
5 more minutes.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Renee's got another thing.
So I asked this one to David today, so I might ask it to you as well. Where do you draw for some context, our brief for our client is a brand brief. And where do you think the line between marketing and design and media comms and advertising all sort of ends, and which areas should you not jump into when figuring out a brand and the communication that goes with that?
I'm not sure I understand.
So when we're thinking about a brand, you have many, many different touch points that different, I guess, departments have a say in or a stake in. And it was just hard for me to figure out where advertising fits with all that. And if we should go around fixing designs or fixing marketing compared to the advertising.
So brand, this is something we don't have fight. Well, we sometimes have fights about between a branding agency like Interbrand and an advertising agency like DDB. When it comes to doing brand, we think it's brand. It's communicating the values of the brand, or there's no product, there's no price. It's just, we want you to feel better about our brand. And then Interbrand will come along and they'll define the brand. They will design interactions. They'll look at the UX around that brand, and they'll do all sorts of things that are brand, but they're not advertising. We're just the advertising things. So I think an idea is the place to start, whatever you're doing. And I think
that sort of integrates it all.
Well, yeah, if you've got an idea,
yeah,
like small is you think about small is tough for Polo. Obviously, Volkswagen's the brand, Polo's a sub-brand. Small is tough had enough room in it to go, okay, I could do a DM piece that's small but really hard to open. We could build a concrete bunker showroom. You could make sure that all your customers got the key came in a little box. You could use that idea way beyond the advertising to tick all those different levels. So I think if you've got a really good idea that unites, it's born out of an insight into your brand or product and the market, you will give birth to something that really works. I think it's an idea as a child of those two insights I often find.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a great place to start.
Just to give you some context, Ben, Renee is a double degree student, so she's pulled between two disciplines, design and advertising.
Okay, we'll pick one. It's probably my advice, and stick with it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to say goodbye if that's all right. There's nothing else.
No, thank you very much, Ben.
Pleasure, John.
Yeah, it's been it's been great. Some great insights there. Thank you for sharing some of those brilliant advertisements with us. Yes, we'll see you again.
Yeah, good.
Too long.
Thank you, Ben.
Good luck with everything.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.